The ninth bell tolls across Tartarus Secundus at 0847 hours, its bronze resonance cutting through perpetual haze like pressure released from a wounded machine. The sound carries differently here than on civilized worlds, not the clear peal of cathedral bronze, but a grinding mechanical note filtered through atmospheric processes and the constant drone of extraction machinery. Men and women stop where they stand and look nowhere at all, as if the sound is a horizon they cannot reach. On this slate-grey penal world, days are measured by shift sirens, deaths are measured by bells. The ninth is the one that makes even the wardens check their watches. In Processing Bay Gamma 7, 347 prisoners stand in Binharic-coded lines beneath humming lumen strips. Servo skulls drift like patient carrion, lenses blinking red as they tally the condemned. The Q organization follows strict administratum protocols: murderers in the left column, tax evaders center, seditionists right, with subcategories determined by collar color and numerical designations burned into scalps during intake. The air tastes of ozone and burned flesh, a combination that new arrivals will learn to associate with the machinery of imperial justice. Confessor Merrick approaches the branding altar with practiced boredom, his vestments faded to the color of dried blood mixed with ash. The sacred brands glow cherry red in their heating cradles, each inscribed with verses from the Lex Imperialis. Service is salvation, pain purifies, redemption through labor. His voice carries no passion as he recites the litany of useful pain, each word as mechanical as the servo skulls recording facial biometrics for the harvest manifest. When the brand meets flesh, steam rises, carrying the smell of tallow and old rations. The mark is lettered geometry of guilt, script that the body will never forget. The mathematics of Tartarus Secundus reveal the true nature of imperial mercy. Average prisoner lifespan, 187 days. Average redemption units required for theoretical release, 2,847. Daily earning potential through standard labor assignments, 4.2 units per shift, assuming perfect health, 0 infractions, and survival rates that defy environmental hazards. The calculation yields a simple truth: no prisoner speaks aloud, but all understand. Freedom requires 678 days of perfect performance on a world where median survival falls short by 491 days. This mathematical impossibility is not oversight in imperial bureaucracy, but fundamental design. Hope, carefully calibrated and systematically maintained, proves more effective than despair at organizing labor compliance. The redemption unit system transforms suffering into precise accounting, where human lives become fungible assets in the Imperium's vast economic calculations. The promise of release is a precision instrument to keep hands moving on bad air. Beyond the processing bays, Tartarus Secundus stretches across landscape designed to maximize human misery while maintaining industrial productivity. Ash wastes extend to horizons broken only by skeletal atmospheric processes, their intake vents drawing toxic atmosphere and expelling something marginally breathable into sealed hab complexes. Pit cities descend into the planet's crust like infected wounds, their galleries following adamantium veins that feed imperial shipyards. Servitors guard these installations with patient inevitability of machines that have forgotten they were once human, their lobotomized brains hardwired with simple command protocols. As the ninth bell's echo fades into mechanical breathing of life support systems, a new sound enters Tartarus Secundus. High above the smog layer, fusion drives burn against pale starlight as an orbital transport adjusts descent trajectory. The vessel bears aquila and scrollwork of the Adeptus Administratum, its arrival unscheduled but not unexpected, Even in hell, ledgers must balance. When they do not, auditors arrive to restore fiscal discipline through methods that make standard penal labor seem merciful. The transport's shadow passes over processing bays like Dark Omen, suggesting that imperial justice extends far beyond this single world. The ninth bell is not merely local instrument but part of greater symphony, its tolling synchronized with similar bells across countless worlds, where the Imperium transforms its own citizens into raw materials of survival. Sacred logistics. But logistics of what precisely? The bell will tell us if we are patient. The chits will tell us when we learn how to read them. The administratum transport settles onto landing platform Tertius with hydraulic sighs that reveal the true scope of Tartarus Secundus stretching beneath perpetual smog. From this elevation, the planet's function becomes clear, not merely a prison but a world machine where every geological feature has been weaponized against human survival and every weather pattern serves imperial logistics. The transport's arrival illuminates landscape designed to kill efficiently while maintaining industrial productivity quotas that feed the Imperium's endless hunger for raw materials. Silica storms sweep across ash wastes with clockwork regularity, their crystalline particles sharp enough to strip flesh from bone within minutes of exposure. These storms follow patterns logged by Mechanicus weather servitors, their timing coordinated with shift rotations to ensure maximum labor disruption when productivity falls behind schedule. The ecology of Tartarus Secundus is not accident of geology but policy sedimented into climate. Acid rain falls during designated purification cycles, its chemical composition balanced to sterilize surface contamination while inflicting calculated damage on exposed tissue. Environmental degradation functions as population control. The planet disciplines even when wardens sleep. Hab stacks rise from the surface like infected wounds, their corrugated walls welded directly to strip mine entrances so that prisoners sleep above tunnels where they will die. Architecture eliminates boundaries between living space and workspace, making existence itself a form of labor. Prometheum reclamation lakes dot the landscape like poisoned mirrors, their surfaces reflecting chemical aurora against perpetual twilight. Mechanicus tech adepts tend these installations with religious devotion, processing organic waste through refinement protocols that transform bodies into fuel for imperial machinery. The production chain reveals imperial logistics in pure form. Adamantium ore extraction occurs in galleries extending deep into planetary crust, where prisoners work in shock-tethered teams to prevent escape into darkness. Ore moves through conveyor systems to factorum processing plants monitored by servo-skull networks. Processed materials load onto orbital macro haulers whose cargo routes to Imperial Navy shipyards at Saran Prime and Belt 11 Theta, where metal becomes hull plating for vessels enforcing Imperial will across the galaxy. Each link represents calculated risk and systematic punishment, human metabolism transformed into ship-grade materials through precise application of suffering. Population stratification follows strict hierarchical protocols governing every aspect of life and death. Inmates wear color-coded collars determining access to food, shelter, medical care, and work assignments. Red indicates violent offenders assigned to deepest mining operations. Yellow marks tax evaders suitable for surface labor. Blue designates political prisoners whose education makes them valuable for technical assignments. Warden families occupy fortified enclaves surrounded by electrified barriers, their atmospheric purification systems and hydroponic gardens existing in stark contrast to prisoner conditions. Arbite's garrisons maintain order through selective enforcement of regulations that criminalize survival itself, their weapons trained on hab blocks with fields of fire calculated for maximum suppression effectiveness. Ministorum missions operate from reinforced chapels where confessors preach salvation through suffering, while maintaining psychological profiles for administrative optimization. Mechanicus detachments tend life support engines with devotion reserved for machines, their augmetic limbs immune to caustic vapors that dissolve organic tissue. Operations follow precise metrics that reveal systematic calculation behind apparent chaos. Daily output quotas demand 847 tons of processed materials per sector. Injury rates average 340 per thousand shift hours, maintained through equipment failures and forced overtime that motivate workforce compliance. Ghost hours occur when machinery cools for maintenance cycles and contraband moves through tunnels that official maps claim do not exist. During these intervals, filters change hands, LHO sticks appear, and bolt cutters vanish from tool cages to reappear as currency in survival economies that mirror or logistics. Census records reveal discrepancies of 19% between official prisoner tallies and pit ledger entries, suggesting operations existing outside standard administrative oversight. Intake manifests bear stamps for Slate 44B classification, indicating conditional release to specialized service assignments that never appear in transfer documentation. The phrase remains precise and empty. Specialized to whom? Released to where? As Processing Bay Gamma 7 prepares another file for entry, the manifest clerk moistens his stamp, the Mechanicus Tech Adept checks collar frequencies, and Confessor Merrick opens his book to pages describing doors whose name is Mercy and whose destination no ledger records. The world's dual function as extraction site and something else entirely begins to emerge from bureaucratic shadows, suggesting purposes beyond simple punishment that will soon demand closer examination. The Administratum Audit Transport bleeds residual heat across landing platform Tertius as secondary shuttles arrive bearing fresh human cargo from across the sector. Shackled chains clatter against metal gantries in rhythms the planet knows by heart, each link representing another body fed into the world, machines grinding metabolism. Adeptus Arbites Proctor. Thane supervises the transfer with mechanical precision. His servo-skull attendant scanning cargo manifests that transform human beings into administrative categories through bureaucratic alchemy more precise than any tech adept's rituals. The documents reveal imperial justice in its purest bureaucratic form. Tax evasion cases encompass citizens who failed to meet impossible tithe demands calculated to exceed planetary productivity. Unlicensed psyker activity includes anyone displaying intuition beyond approved parameters, from navigators who read stellar currents without guild sanction to children who dreamed of distant worlds. Seditious assembly charges apply to gatherings of 3 or more citizens without proper permits, criminalizing conversation itself when surveillance quotas require filling. Each crime carries penalties calculated to maintain workforce levels rather than dispense proportional punishment, justice bending where ledgers require. Retroactive reclassification occurs during transport to meet labor quotas established by administratum assessors monitoring production shortfalls. A merchant convicted of minor fraud becomes a resource allocation violator, suitable for hazardous mining assignments. A scribe charged with clerical errors transforms into a data integrity saboteur, requiring extended penal service. Proctor Thane's stylus moves across parchment with practiced efficiency, each stroke adding years to sentences while maintaining the fiction of proportional justice. The Lex Imperialis allows it. In quarters above the bay, quotas burn red across cogitator screens, and administrative necessity overwrites legal precedent. Processing begins with systematic subtraction disguised as sanitation protocol. Prisoners strip in intake bays while servo skulls catalogue personal effects destined for incineration, erasing identity through inventory. Delousing chambers spray chemical solutions that burn skin while eliminating parasites, pain serving dual purposes of sanitation and psychological conditioning. The mist leaves lips numb and lungs aching. Those who cough too long receive chalk marks for reclamation processing. Catechization follows as Confessor Merrick recites Imperial doctrine while prisoners repeat responses from memory cards distributed during transport, transforming names into numbers and histories into classifications. Branding occurs in processing bay gamma 7 under lumen strips that flicker with each application of heated metal to flesh. Sacred brands burn verses from the Lex Imperialis into skin that will carry these marks until death, or servitorization erases identity entirely. The iron seals bargains into tissue, sigils that make persons legible to machinery, even when voices have been filed away. Steam rises from wounds carrying the smell of tallow and old rations, while Mechanicus tech adepts monitor vital signs to ensure survival through systematic scarification. Collar assignment follows strict protocols established by Mechanicus doctrine and administratum efficiency requirements. Tech adept Zephyr 9 calibrates shock collars to Vox cant frequencies ranging from code 9 theta through 0 omega, each designation determining access to work areas, food distribution, and medical care. The collars integrate with planetary communication networks, allowing remote activation for discipline or detonation for permanent problem resolution. 9 theta classification appears on restricted deployment manifests with red script flashing warnings, suggesting purposes beyond standard population control that remain classified under Mechanicus protocols. Each prisoner receives a tally chit stamped with numerical designation and initial redemption unit balance of 0. The bone plastic tokens track work points earned through labor assignments and penances accumulated through infractions, creating precise accounting systems that measure human worth in imperial currency. Posted conversion charts show exchange rates, ore sled meters, hours without incident, participation in disciplinary rites. Arithmetic pretends to be grace, while mathematics ensure compliance through carefully calculated impossibility. Classification systems determine survival probability through work assignments ranging from surface maintenance to deep gallery excavation. Mine-worthy designation indicates physical capacity for underground labor, where cave-ins provide natural population control. Refinery-capable classification assigns prisoners to chemical processing, where acid burns accumulate until medical discharge. Reclamation-suitable indicates assignment to Prometheum Lake maintenance, where organic waste processing provides steady carcinogenic exposure. Collective liability clauses ensure group compliance through shared punishment protocols, where one prisoner's escape triggers execution for 10 randomly selected inmates, transforming individual desperation into collective surveillance. At precisely 12:47 hours, the 9th bell tolls once, not the steady cadence of shift change, but a single measured note that makes the intake line hesitate. A servo skull drifting near the ceiling pivots its lenses downward and records each face, painting invisible sigils across cheekbones as it builds a harvest manifest. Confessor Merrick delivers his standard benediction with practiced boredom. Earn release through valor or service to the Golden Throne. The words carry weight of imperial doctrine while concealing administrative realities that transform service into disposal and valor into expendability. In Hab Block Delta 7, prisoner 7-something-31 Kappa begins scratching tally marks on his bunk frame from day 1. The former Imperial Guard Sergeant maintains his own accounting against the system's calculations, each mark representing survival rather than compliance. His methodical record-keeping suggests understanding that official tallies serve administrative purposes rather than accurate measurement. As atmospheric processors hiss through ventilation systems, the 9th bell's echo fades into mechanical breathing that will measure their remaining days. Dawn arrives without sunrise on Tartarus Secundus, marked only by the grinding wheeze of atmospheric processors cycling from night filtration to day operations. The first waking breath tastes of rubber and ash as 300 inmates stir in Hab Block Delta 7, their movements synchronized by shift sirens that penetrate bone as much as hearing. Prisoner 77731 Kappa examines his 8th tally mark, scratched into corroded bunk metal, each line representing survival rather than hope in a system designed to measure human worth through mathematical impossibility. Respirator distribution occurs at 05:30 hours in equipment bays where wardens dispense breathing apparatus with calculated indifference. The filters arrive already half spent, their carbon cores stained yellow-brown from previous shifts, replacement earned only through quota overfulfillment that requires surviving long enough to exceed expectations. Stress fractures in seal gaskets will leak toxic vapors within 4 hours of use, transforming each breath into negotiation with scarcity. Fresh filters become currency more stable than scrip, their medical value creating exchange rates that fluctuate with injury statistics and supply availability. Cutter teams descend through shaft elevators into adamantium veins where geological formations extend deeper than Imperial records indicate. Each team works tethered by shock leashes threaded through collar housings, preventing escape while ensuring collective punishment when individuals fall. The leashes deliver disciplinary voltage for unauthorized movement while providing emergency extraction capability when cave-ins occur with statistical regularity. Servitor mules grind past on rusted tracks, their lobotomized brains hardwired with navigation protocols that ignore human screams echoing from collapsed galleries where chalk crosses mark acceptable loss events. Rations arrive at mid-shift through automated dispensers, calculating nutritional requirements based on work assignments and disciplinary records. Algae protein blocks provide minimum caloric intake to sustain labor capacity, while Promethium tea substitute delivers caffeine analogues during 16-hour shifts. The food tastes of recycled organics and industrial lubricants, flavors that become familiar through repetition rather than palatability. Shorting a meal creates surplus functioning as currency where medical supplies cost 3 days of hunger and tool maintenance requires 5 missed dinners. The 16-8 shift rotation maximizes productivity while maintaining prisoner populations at sustainable levels through calculated attrition. 16 hours of labor followed by 8 hours of rest creates biological stress that weakens immune systems and reduces life expectancy to administrative projections. Sleep occurs in shifts preventing coordination while ensuring continuous production. The planet breathing in ore and exhaling processed materials through human metabolism transformed into industrial process. Accident protocols reveal bureaucratic efficiency in processing human casualties. Bodies from cave-ins move through triage systems, separating salvageable organs for Mechanicus candidate assessment from waste suitable for ash pit disposal. Tech Adept Zephyr 9 evaluates corpses with clinical detachment, marking tissue quality for potential servitorization, while recording mortality rates that balance against production quotas. Those who die too quickly for harvesting burn in Promethium furnaces powering atmospheric processes, their carbon becoming part of air that kills their replacements. Survival economies emerge wherever official supply falters through desperate ingenuity. Tool theft rings operate complex networks, moving cutting implements between work teams, each transaction requiring trust that death makes temporary. Contraband filter markets exchange clean breathing apparatus for sexual favors, information, or accumulated ration credits. Wardens operate script padding schemes, skimming allocation percentages while maintaining official distribution records, creating artificial shortages that increase black market values and administrative profits. Inmates develop coping mechanisms preserving sanity while acknowledging reality. Prayer counting transforms labor into meditation, where hammer strikes become rosary beads and oar loads measure devotional discipline. Name recitation preserves identity for disappeared prisoners, whose official records show transfer to specialized service, but whose bunks remain permanently empty. Burn ointment functions as currency more precious than LHO sticks, a paste of industrial grease and medicinal scraps that wards off infection long enough for skin to scab over acid burns. At precisely 12:47 hours each day, the ninth bell tolls once with mechanical precision that halts work across all sectors simultaneously. The sound reaches into collars through vox-cant frequencies, specific codes, triggering compliance responses in designated inmates. Not all collars respond, only those keyed to particular frequencies that wardens call harvest bands. Selected prisoners step from work lines without speaking, forming columns where red and blue collars alternate in patterns designed to empty specific work groups without crashing output in any single sector. Overseers record these transfers as redemption, while servo skulls update manifests tracking faces toward transport bays running sideways into administration corridors rather than surface commissaries. Monthly oath-brand recalibration occurs in medical bays where mechanicus adepts sear fresh marks over previous scars, literally overwriting time and identity through systematic tissue destruction. Cautery irons heat under humming coils as prisoners kneel in rows, old sigils blistering under new Lex Imperialis verses applied over scar tissue. The procedure serves no medical purpose beyond pain administration and record maintenance, creating palimpsest flesh where original crimes disappear beneath administrative updates. Prisoner 7731 Kappa bears 17 layers of scar tissue from intake processing and subsequent recalibrations, his skin becoming living parchment recording bureaucratic revisions rather than personal history. As the ninth bell's echo fades into atmospheric processor hiss, questions emerge that hunger alone cannot answer. Why does the bell summon only specific collar frequencies while others remain silent? What purpose does systematic erasure of prisoner scars serve beyond administrative convenience? The machinery of control extends beyond visible mechanisms, suggesting hierarchies of authority and purpose that transform human beings into willing participants in their own systematic destruction through methods more sophisticated than simple starvation. The questions that hunger cannot answer lead directly from the tunnels to the offices where power transforms suffering into policy. The ninth bell's selective summons and the systematic erasure of prisoner scars both point to an enforcement architecture built on precision rather than randomness, revealing hierarchical systems that convert individual brutality into administrative necessity. To understand how compliance operates beyond simple starvation, we must map the authority chains that make resistance logistically impossible while maintaining the fiction of imperial justice. Warden Governor Valdris occupies the apex of local authority while answering directly to administratum tithe assessors, whose quarterly reports determine planetary survival through resource allocation adjustments. His office overlooks primary extraction zones through reinforced glass that filters acid rain while providing clear sight lines to monitor production quotas in real time. Valdris possesses the temperament of a metronome, measuring human worth through output statistics rather than moral consideration. When assessors arrive bearing red-sealed audit directives, even governors discover the limitations of local power within imperial bureaucracy that treats worlds as ledger entries requiring constant balancing. Below him, Arbeitsproctor Thane enforces Lex Imperialis through selective application that criminalizes survival while maintaining plausible legal authority. His jurisdiction encompasses all violations of imperial law, from major infractions like escape attempts to minor offenses such as unauthorized congregation or insufficient enthusiasm during mandatory prayer sessions. Thane reads ordinances like weapon manuals and applies them with ballistic clarity, his servo skull network monitoring compliance through constant surveillance that records violations justifying collective punishment while maintaining detailed legal documentation for administrative review. Sector overseers command work gangs through combination of economic leverage and physical intimidation, their positions attracting failed Imperial Guard sergeants and discharged PDF officers seeking employment utilizing military experience while requiring minimal moral flexibility. These functionaries maintain discipline through ration manipulation, medical supply distribution, and assignment to hazardous work details where survival depends on continued favor. When standard enforcement proves insufficient, commissarial advisors deploy with authorization for extraordinary measures including summary execution and psychological intervention protocols designed to restore operational efficiency through systematic terror. Control mechanisms extend far beyond visible enforcement through technological integration that makes resistance logistically impossible. Remote collar detonation via Vox-9, theta frequency, allows instant elimination of problem prisoners without requiring physical presence or legal justification, the system operating through planetary communication networks monitored by Mechanicus tech adepts who maintain technical neutrality while providing operational capability for area pacification protocols. Collective penalties under Lex Penitus transform individual transgression into community threat, making 10 prisoners responsible for monitoring one potential violator through shared punishment that divides suffering by 10 while multiplying compliance through biological necessity. Physical discipline engines occupy dedicated chambers where pain administration becomes precise science rather than crude punishment. Pain racks calibrate nerve stimulation to maintain consciousness while maximizing suffering duration. Pillories provide public demonstration of authority along transit causeways where every shift must pass the same bowed backs. Neural scramblers deliver targeted brain damage, eliminating specific memories while preserving work capacity, allowing personality modification without reducing productive value through Imperial technology applied to human management with mechanical efficiency. Economic control operates through ration downgrades for insufficient zeal and work assignment punishments that transform survival into performance metric. Food allocation reflects behavioral assessment rather than nutritional requirements, with portions reduced for inadequate enthusiasm during mandatory activities. Constant servitor surveillance creates panopticon effect, where observation becomes internalized assumption, servo skulls drifting through hab blocks recording conversations while identifying potential resistance networks before they achieve operational capability. Surveillance extends beyond physical monitoring into psychological manipulation through systematic exploitation of human social requirements. Confessionals receive electronic monitoring that records spiritual admissions for administrative use, transforming religious practice into intelligence gathering. Informant networks receive privilege allocation, including better rations and safer work assignments in exchange for reporting suspicious activity, creating distrust that prevents solidarity formation while weaponizing hope itself through redemption, promises organizing behavior while concealing administrative intentions. Critical administrative language appears in documents bearing red seals and priority classifications. Redemption offensive authorized upon audited shortfall represents bureaucratic euphemism concealing operational reality behind procedural terminology, suggesting systematic response to productivity failures extending beyond standard disciplinary measures. The phrase transforms human disposal into administrative necessity while maintaining legal framework for extraordinary actions whose true nature will soon demand closer examination. The ideology sustaining this apparatus presents obedience as purity and failure as sin, creating self-reinforcing psychological control that makes prisoners complicit in their own oppression through internalized belief rather than external coercion alone. The enforcement apparatus that transforms individual brutality into administrative necessity requires more than shock collars and pain racks to sustain itself across generations of suffering. Raw force explains compliance, but doctrine makes it orderly, transforming daily torment into spiritual practice while providing psychological structures that prevent complete collapse under conditions designed to eliminate hope. The Ministorum mission operates as both genuine comfort and precision instrument of policy, weaving imperial theology with penal logistics to create systems where belief reinforces compliance while harvesting guilt as labor discipline. Confessor Merrick presides over this theological machinery, from reinforced chapels welded from decommissioned hab plates, his ministry presenting pain as purification and labor as prayer through sermons that echo via voxcasters during shift preparations. His morning homilies reach prisoners donning half-spent respirators with promises that each hammer blow strikes sin from souls and every acid burn cleanses corruption from flesh, creating framework where endurance becomes virtue while positioning compliance as devotion to the golden throne. The theological structure gives meaning to meaningless suffering while organizing behavior through carefully calibrated hope that functions as administrative technology. Redemptionist lay orders conduct flagellant processions through pit cities during shift changes, their self-inflicted wounds providing visceral demonstration of penance theology while timing themselves to the ninth bell's sacred schedule. Blood spatters on walkway grating become devotional symbols as torn flesh demonstrates proper relationship between body and spirit, their chanted litanies mixing imperial doctrine with work songs that synchronize religious fervor with industrial rhythms. The processions follow prescribed routes, ensuring maximum visibility during prisoner movement, their mortification drawing eyes from tool cages while clearing main arterials for all convoys through public penance that functions as cheap barricade control. Inmates develop folk creeds adapting imperial theology to survival requirements through practices that preserve sanity while acknowledging reality. Counting breaths as prayers transforms respiratory struggle into meditation, where each inhalation becomes devotional act, every 50th breath a whispered name for the disappeared. Wall saints emerge in chalk drawings beside bunks, creating pantheon of martyrs whose intercession might provide protection against cave-ins or collar malfunctions. Secret litanies circulate through tunnels on scrap parchment, preserving pre-imprisonment identities through recitation of names, occupations, and loved ones, despite monthly oath-brand recalibrations attempting systematic erasure. In warden quarters above the pit cities, the interweaving of doctrine and economics becomes starkly visible through shrines sitting beside ledgers, where administrators speak of mercy measured in reduced lashing quotas and compassion calculated through ration distribution statistics. Warden families maintain private chapels where imperial saints watch over children playing with toy soldiers while their parents count bodies in production reports, the juxtaposition revealing how faith functions differently across hierarchical levels while providing moral justification for those implementing suffering and spiritual comfort for those enduring it. Environmental degradation receives theological interpretation that transforms planetary hostility into divine testing through doctrine perfectly calibrated for world machines consuming human souls. Acid rain becomes cleansing fire sent by the Emperor to purify corruption through chemical baptism. Toxic air represents test of faith where survival demonstrates worthiness for continued existence. Industrial decay reflects moral corruption requiring redemption through increased labor and deeper penance, making every breath an act of worship while positioning environmental suffering as spiritual opportunity rather than administrative negligence. Merrick offers direct path to salvation through absolution, through service programs recruiting volunteers for redemption offensives in exchange for Slate 44 B status promising conditional release. The volunteers receive special blessing ceremonies where sacred oils anoint foreheads while servo skulls record biometric data for transport manifests, their willingness demonstrating faith while providing administrative solution to workforce shortages in specialized operations requiring expendable personnel. The theology presents voluntary service as ultimate expression of devotion, while concealing operational realities behind religious terminology that transforms disposal into transcendence. Growing tension permeates planetary hierarchy as rumors spread regarding impending administratum audit whose transport burns visible above smog layers. Production quotas fall behind schedule due to equipment failures, workforce attrition, and geological complications in deep extraction zones, threatening to trigger early bell protocols whose implementation remains classified under red-sealed administrative directives. Someone saw courier cases carried into the governor's office. Someone else heard Proctor Thane practice the phrase audited shortfall with voice that fits no hymn. The convergence of bureaucratic demands and physical limitations suggests approaching rupture, where institutional promises meet operational necessities. When the ninth bell prepares to toll outside its sacred schedule, disrupting theological logistics with emergency protocols, questions emerge whose answers will determine whether absolution, through service, proves genuine salvation or administrative euphemism. The machinery that transforms flesh and faith into imperial currency through systematic suffering faces its greatest test when something must break, whether hope, bodies, or the careful balance between doctrine and disposal that keeps the world machine grinding forward through measured applications of manufactured grace. The rupture begins at 0610 hours when administratum audit servitors descend from orbital transport bays, their multi-limbed forms moving with mechanical precision through processing centers. Red ink gleams wet on stamping apparatus as servo skulls drift between ledger stations, their optical sensors recording production variants with digital indifference. The assessment proves swift and merciless. Production shortfall of 12.8% below imperial tithe requirements. The figure appears on every cogitator screen in crimson numerals that transform 18 months of systematic brutality into statistical failure requiring immediate corrective intervention. Arbeit's Proctor Thane receives the edict in his reinforced office at 0847 hours, the parchment crackling as he unfolds imperial directives whose bureaucratic language conceals operational brutality behind administrative necessity. His voice carries across Vox networks with mechanical precision as he reads corrective measures to assembled overseers. Production quotas increase 40% effective immediately, rations decrease 25% to motivate enhanced performance, redemption offensive authorized for immediate implementation under Articles of Emergency Provision. The mathematical impossibility becomes systematically worse through imperial intervention, each percentage point representing calculated human cost measured in statistical abstractions. By 1100 hours, overseers have doubled work gangs in critical sectors without adding respirator filters or illumination equipment. The strain shows immediately in equipment failure rates and medical incidents as prisoners attempt to meet impossible quotas with inadequate life support. Tech Adept Zephyr 9 monitors communication arrays from his sanctum as warning lights cascade across control panels, the increased operational tempo pushing planetary infrastructure beyond design parameters. Voxcant frequencies require constant recalibration as collar networks struggle to maintain signal integrity under systemic overload. At 1733 hours, the ninth bell begins tolling outside its sacred schedule with mechanical stutters that suggest system malfunction rather than divine intervention. The irregular cadence carries wrong harmonics through atmospheric processors, creating resonance patterns that interfere with Voxcant frequencies calibrated to collar networks. Cascade failure spreads through Sector 7 as miscalibrated frequencies cause collar systems to malfunction with lethal randomness. Some shock collars unlock entirely, their restraining mechanisms disengaging as prisoners stare at suddenly accessible throat protection with disbelief that transforms rapidly into desperate opportunity. Others constrict fatally, crushing windpipes with hydraulic pressure as their wearers claw at metal bands drawing closed around necks. Confusion ignites faster than Prometheum as prisoners witness collar failures creating temporary freedom alongside systematic murder. In Gallery Tertius, Overseer Krex attempts to maintain order through traditional intimidation tactics, his shock maul crackling with electrical discharge as he threatens workers whose collars no longer respond to remote commands. Prisoner 77731 Kappa steps forward with 17 layers of scar tissue mapping administrative history across his flesh, his Imperial Guard training evident as he speaks words that transform individual desperation into coordinated resistance. The confrontation escalates when work gangs storm the Overseer Tower with improvised weapons carved from mining tools, their assault coordinated through hand signals developed during months of surveillance evasion. Arbites deploy with shock mauls and scatterguns as violence spreads through multiple sectors simultaneously, their riot suppression training proving effective against individual resistance but insufficient for coordinated uprising. Mechanicus pattern cherubs release sopor fog designed to pacify large populations through airborne sedatives, the chemical mist settling into drifts near floor level where it mixes with dust into paste that coats tongues and burns respiratory tissue. Emergency klaxons wail across industrial complexes as fires spread through hab blocks where overturned lumen strips ignite accumulated debris. At 1916 hours, seismic charges detonate prematurely in deep adamantium veins as system failures cascade through mining operations. Someone misread a counter during the frantic push to meet accelerated quotas. Someone overrode safety delays to achieve numbers stamped in red ink. The explosive force channels through geological formations that amplify destruction beyond calculated parameters, and Gallery Tertius collapses in grinding avalanche of stone and metal that buries an entire cutter team beneath tons of rubble. The ground shudders with deep, guttural roar, echoing through miles of tunnels as ancient rock formations surrender structural integrity. Dust billows through ventilation systems carrying the smell of pulverized stone mixed with organic matter. Warden Governor Valdris seizes the crisis as opportunity to implement redemption offensive protocols, his orders transforming disaster into administrative solution through bureaucratic alchemy that converts casualties into assets. Emergency broadcasts summon volunteers for rescue operations, while Confessor Merrick establishes blessing stations where prisoners receive sacred oils and final benedictions before marching toward collapsed galleries. The theological presentation conceals operational reality, as human excavation tools receive religious sanction while serving practical functions in dangerous recovery operations. Hands disappear into grey slurry as prisoners dig through rubble with bare fingers, their flesh torn by sharp adamantium fragments while they search for survivors whose rescue provides cover for systematic disposal. A boot sticks out of rippling debris and then sinks with soft, obscene patience. Somewhere under 30 meters of crushed ore, someone taps 3 times with metal tool fragments, the sound carrying like prayer and inventory combined. Confessor Merrick moves among bleeding volunteers with practiced efficiency, his thumb leaving oil smears on foreheads already slick with dust and fear, as he recites benedictions that transform service into transcendence through carefully chosen words. The 9th bell tolls continuously under settling dust as servo skulls record biometric data from volunteers whose redemption through service will soon reveal its true meaning. Administrative personnel maintain production records despite ongoing violence, their styluses moving across parchment with practiced efficiency that transforms chaos into statistical entries. Ledger clerks establish folding desks between blast shields and begin calculating units of effort, units of devotion, units of loss, while auxiliary transports glide through smog toward landing platforms marked with Slate 44B classifications. By midnight, corridors have been dug far enough to find pockets of air, where 3 men crawl out with eyes like boiled eggs and new skin on their gums. 20 more do not emerge. Prisoner 7731 Kappa surfaces with bandages blackened by chemical burns and returns to the excavation without being ordered, his methodical approach suggesting understanding that survival requires continued utility. The column of blessed volunteers diverts on quiet orders toward chapel rear passages where aquila symbols have been painted over with sealant the color of old rain. Smoke rises over pit cities as fires spread through industrial complexes, the audit remaining incomplete while corrective measures reveal their true nature through systematic implementation. The ninth bell's continuous tolling creates new rhythms of compliance as prisoners march toward destinations that official manifests do not record, their redemption through service suggesting purposes beyond simple rescue, whose administrative classification will soon demand closer examination. By dawn, the smoke has cleared enough for administrative machinery to resume normal function. Audit clerks establishing folding desks beneath blast shields where red ink dries across parchment that transforms yesterday's chaos into today's compliance statistics. The collapse and violence serve as catalyst for systematic implementation of protocols whose true nature emerges through careful examination of bureaucratic documentation, revealing Imperial mercy as precision instrument whose operation depends on concealing disposal behind theological terminology that makes systematic murder emotionally palatable for those implementing policy. Following the paper trail through aftermath documentation reveals the architecture underlying Slate 44. Be conditional release to specialized service, whose administrative classification routes bodies rather than souls through destinations concealed behind euphemistic language designed to maintain operational security while preserving moral fiction. They transport manifests bearing Departamento Munitorum seals arrive at auxiliary landing platforms within 18 hours of redemption offensive implementation. Their cargo holds configured for maximum human capacity, with restraint systems prioritizing containment over comfort or survival probability. The first destination transforms blessed volunteers into expendable assault reserves through collar refitting procedures that replace shock delivery mechanisms with DT charges keyed to Vox Kant 9 theta pacification frequencies. Tech adept Zephyr 9 oversees the conversion with clinical precision, his augmetic limbs calibrating detonation systems, while servo skulls record biometric data determining optimal placement for maximum tactical utility. The redeemed receive remote-activated execution devices ensuring compliance through guaranteed mortality rather than disciplinary pain, their service to the Golden Throne measured in seconds of distraction provided to regular Imperial Guard units during frontal assaults against Xenos or heretic positions. Mechanicus Flesh Tithe represents the second primary routing destination, its requisition orders stamped with technical specifications requesting biological components meeting precise criteria for servitorization processing. Candidate assessment occurs in sanctified chambers where incense mingles with caustic cleanser, while medical apparatus probes tissue quality and neural compatibility for various conversion protocols. Successful candidates undergo lobotomization procedures, eliminating consciousness while preserving motor functions essential for industrial applications. Their processed remains feeding both planetary life support systems requiring organic components and broader Imperial logistics networks, consuming servitor labor across the subsector. The ninth bell's true function resolves through timing analysis, revealing collection schedules, coordinating these transfers, rather than marking moments of spiritual transcendence. Each toll synchronizes with transport arrivals, processing quotas, and delivery deadlines, treating human beings as inventory requiring systematic management through precise scheduling protocols. Sacred resonance conceals logistical coordination behind religious symbolism, the bell operating as harvest signal, whose theological presentation makes systematic disposal emotionally bearable for administrative personnel implementing imperial policy while maintaining production efficiency. Ledger analysis reveals redemptions credited as production output through accounting methods transforming human processing into statistical achievement measured in imperial currency. One processed body equals 2.3 tons of ore, equivalent in administrative calculations, biological value exceeding mineral extraction through bureaucratic alchemy, converting flesh into assets more stable than adamantium futures. The mathematics reframe hope as administrative technology organizing behavior until extraction becomes feasible, each redemption unit representing fractional progress toward systematic disposal rather than genuine liberation from penal servitude. The 19% census discrepancy between official records and pit ledgers represents unrecorded transfers and wastage laundered through service credits balancing books while concealing operational reality from external oversight. Missing prisoners appear in redemption statistics rather than mortality reports, their disappearance transformed into spiritual achievement through careful manipulation of bureaucratic categories that create parallel reality where systematic murder becomes salvation. Gallery tertius collapse becomes legible as scheduling disruption in disposal machinery rather than industrial accident, premature detonation forcing accelerated redemption offensive implementation designed to maintain processing quotas despite infrastructure damage. Tartarus secundus serves dual functions extending beyond simple resource extraction into technique development for imperial population control methods exported across the galaxy through administratum directives and commissarial advisories. Successful suppression protocols developed through prisoner management receive documentation and refinement before implementation on civilian populations, where similar techniques maintain order through systematic brutality disguised as administrative necessity. The planet functions as living laboratory where environmental hostility, systematic deprivation, and theological manipulation create optimal testing conditions for population control, innovations requiring validation before broader deployment. Labor management systems pioneered through penal experimentation provide templates for industrial efficiency programs reducing worker rights while maximizing productivity through calculated suffering. Psychological conditioning techniques tested on prisoner populations undergo evaluation and modification before export to educational institutions, military training facilities, and civilian compliance operations where similar methods shape behavior through manufactured hope and systematic disappointment. The collar frequency calibrations, collective liability protocols, and redemption unit accounting all represent exportable technologies whose development costs recover through licensing agreements with other imperial facilities. Administrative documents reveal profit structures extending beyond immediate ore extraction into intellectual property rights for oppression techniques whose systematic refinement generates revenue streams feeding back into planetary operations. Warden Governor Valdris receives performance bonuses calculated through technique export revenues rather than simple production metrics, his administrative success measured through innovations in systematic brutality that enhance imperial governance efficiency across multiple worlds simultaneously. The horror expands beyond individual suffering into systematic methodology where Tartarus Secundus represents prototype for imperial civilian administration, its techniques spreading across imperial space like infection adapted to local conditions while maintaining core principles of hope, manipulation, environmental degradation, and systematic disposal disguised as redemptive service. Prison Planet becomes model for governance through calculated brutality refined into exportable doctrine. Prisoner 77731. Kappa watches chapel passages empty of guards as columns turn toward destinations unmarked on prisoner maps, his 17 layers of scar tissue mapping administrative history across flesh, while new understanding crystallizes through observation of systematic patterns. If redemption feeds imperial war machine through conversion of hope into human inventory, survival requires comprehending ledger meanings concealed behind theological terminology while developing strategies, preserving sanity when every gesture of faith becomes collaborative participation in systematic destruction, whose true architects profit from techniques perfected through carefully calculated suffering. Understanding the true nature of redemption creates psychological rupture, requiring immediate adaptation if prisoners hope to survive systematic disposal disguised as spiritual salvation. The revelation that hope functions as administrative technology, organizing behavior until extraction transforms every gesture of compliance into collaboration with calculated murder, forcing rapid development of underground economies and resistance networks that preserve sanity while acknowledging operational reality. Knowledge changes posture. Once prisoners comprehend that redemption equals inventory management, survival becomes arithmetic with new variables whose calculation determines whether mourning brings another shift or transport to specialized service. Black markets emerge within hours of Gallery Tertius collapse as traditional supply chains fail under emergency protocols, creating opportunities for entrepreneurial adaptation through barter networks operating parallel to official distribution systems. LHO sticks become primary currency more stable than scrip, their stimulant properties providing psychological relief while maintaining trade value across demographic boundaries. Exchange rates fluctuate with injury statistics and supply availability. 3 LHO sticks for half-spent filters, 2 medical ampules for visor seals, information for access to safer assignments. Filter replacements represent ultimate luxury goods whose scarcity creates complex debt relationships extending across multiple hab blocks. Clean breathing apparatus worth more than accumulated rations in economies where survival probability determines credit worthiness. Ledger mothers maintain clandestine tallies of the disappeared in each hab block, their chalk records contradicting official statistics through patient documentation of systematic disposal concealed behind redemption terminology. Mother Ilian in Delta 7 scrapes her lines with fingernails until chalk dust stains cuticles grey, refusing to wash the residue lest the dead be erased twice. These women develop mathematical precision tracking discrepancies between official transfer records and actual departures, their calculations revealing patterns in selection criteria determining Slate 44B classification. The chalk marks accumulate on hidden wall surfaces, creating parallel accounting systems whose accuracy exposes administrative lies while providing intelligence essential for resistance planning. Corruption spreads through administrative hierarchy as wardens discover profit opportunities in systematic breakdown of official protocols. Bell protection services emerge as luxury markets where accumulated scrip purchases temporary immunity from ninth bell selection through collar frequency manipulation provided by tech adepts seeking supplemental income. Overseers rent access to safer work assignments through complex pricing structures reflecting mortality statistics, surface maintenance commanding premium rates justified by reduced exposure to industrial toxins. The survival tax becomes clear through these transactions. Moral compromise is not merely consequence, but prerequisite for existence, each breath requiring choices that blur lines between victim and collaborator. Counter-surveillance develops through systematic exploitation of administrative blind spots created by understaffing and equipment failures. Prisoners carve memory scars into hidden body locations to resist monthly brand overwrites, using improvised cutting tools to create permanent records that recalibration cannot erase. Deliberate extremity damage through controlled industrial accidents complicates servitorization candidacy by reducing biological value while maintaining plausible deniability through occupational hazard statistics. Coded communication systems emerge using work songs whose lyrics conceal tactical information, while tool rhythms provide percussion patterns conveying complex messages across sectors through industrial noise that defeats audio surveillance. Three cases illuminate varied forms of quiet defiance, transforming individual desperation into coordinated resistance. Prisoner 21019 Delta, former tech adept whose procurement irregularity earned penal service, begins systematic sabotage operations through precise machinery interventions, creating equipment failures appearing accidental while reducing operational efficiency. Conveyor belt adjustments introduce subtle timing delays accumulating into significant productivity losses without triggering maintenance audits. Prisoner 004 Kappa, former noble whose family defaulted on regimental funding, organizes resource-sharing networks utilizing aristocratic social skills to coordinate mutual aid systems transcending demographic boundaries. Her distribution mechanisms ensure medical supplies reach critical cases while maintaining operational security through compartmentalized cell structures. Brother Sawn, redemptionist whose theological training enables sophisticated analysis of religious texts, preaches genuine faith versus administrative theology through clandestine prayer meetings, distinguishing imperial doctrine from bureaucratic manipulation. Prisoner 7773, 1 Kappa, coordinates these disparate efforts through military expertise developed during Imperial Guard service, his tactical knowledge enabling strategic planning that transforms individual survival strategies into facility-wide operations. His 17 layers of scar tissue map administrative history while concealing resistance coordination through careful exploitation of surveillance gaps. He maps collar frequency distributions across sectors, recording which designations respond to ninth bell summons, while identifying technical vulnerabilities in Vox-CAD systems. Ghost hour movements synchronize between shafts as tool caches appear at strategic junctions, and maintenance schedules provide cover for intelligence transfers. Evidence accumulates, suggesting systematic coordination among resistance cells through intelligence sharing, transcending individual survival concerns. Throughput declines without signatures of riot or sabotage, while injury rates rise in patterns appearing accidental but achieving strategic objectives. Script flows shift toward operators providing genuine services rather than administrative collaboration. The administration feels these changes in production statistics before recognizing coordinated defiance, their reports noting unexplained efficiency losses requiring investigation. Something organized operates beneath their surveillance, and when systematic resistance challenges administrative control through coordinated prisoner cooperation, the machinery built for punishment will respond with protocols designed to restore compliance through methods that make standard brutality seem merciful. The systematic resistance coordinated by prisoner 77731, Kappa, manifests in production statistics as unexplained efficiency losses that threaten the survival of administrative personnel whose careers depend on maintaining impossible quotas. When throughput declines without signatures of open rebellion, the pressure transfers upward through hierarchical chains where Warden Governor Valdris discovers that official compensation proves inadequate for navigating the brutal economics of planetary isolation. Real survival requires access rather than salary, transforming corruption from moral choice into operational necessity within systems designed to extract maximum productivity from systematically degraded human resources. Base pay in Throne-Gelt means nothing on Tartarus Secundus, where Imperial scrip cannot purchase breathable air or functional equipment from supply chains. Stretched across void distances, wealth derives from controlling bottlenecks in survival infrastructure, ration allocation authority that enables skimming operations, transfer scheduling power, allowing Bell protection services, and collar override codes, providing ultimate leverage in markets where temporary immunity from systematic disposal commands premium pricing. A junior quartermaster controlling respirator filter distribution wields more practical authority than senior administrators whose theoretical rank cannot guarantee next week's survival when atmospheric processors fail and replacement parts require months of bureaucratic requisition. Valdris maintains production quotas through systematic criminalization, expanding the definition of punishable offenses to generate replacement workers when natural attrition threatens labor capacity. Unauthorized congregation charges apply to prisoners sharing meals or medical supplies, their violations justifying extended sentences that transform survival cooperation into administrative inventory. Insufficient enthusiasm infractions target individuals whose productivity falls below arbitrary standards, creating disciplinary statistics that conceal operational failures behind moral judgments. Ghost prisoner entries represent his administrative masterpiece. Phantom inmates recorded on manifests but existing only as ledger data, their fictional presence inflating resource allocations while generating surplus goods for black market redistribution. Complex procurement fraud operates through medical supply purchasing schemes that transform human suffering into stable currency through Mechanicus collaboration. Warden Quartermaster Dex requisitions medical supplies at standard Imperial rates, then trades functional biological components to tech adept Zephyr 9 for augmetic replacements, creating circular economy where prisoner flesh becomes servitor parts feeding back into supply chains through requisition orders disguised as equipment maintenance. The exchange rates favor administrative personnel controlling access while providing Mechanicus detachments with organic components essential for maintaining planetary life support systems, both parties benefiting from systematic exploitation concealed behind standard procurement terminology. The moral cost stratifies across administrative hierarchy through psychological adaptations, reflecting individual capacity for rationalization under impossible working conditions. Junior wardens develop substance dependencies utilizing confiscated Elcho sticks and medical stimulants to maintain emotional distance from daily brutality, their addiction creating vulnerability exploitable by senior administrators seeking operational security through mutual compromise. Mid-level overseers cultivate professional detachment, treating prisoners as production statistics rather than human beings, their deliberate dehumanization enabling efficient implementation of systematic cruelty while preserving sanity through mathematical abstraction. Senior administrators develop theological justifications presenting corruption as necessary, mercy, reducing suffering through improved efficiency, Confessor Merrick providing doctrinal interpretations that frame ghost prisoners as souls already redeemed and systematic fraud as service to the Golden Throne. Specific corruption mechanisms proliferate throughout every aspect of planetary operations where official protocols prove inadequate for maintaining function. Bell Protection Services sell temporary immunity from 9th Bell selection through collar frequency manipulation coordinated between communications officers and tech adepts seeking supplemental income. overseers rent access to safer work assignments utilizing mortality statistics to justify premium pricing for surface maintenance duties and reduced exposure assignments. Medical supply distribution creates debt relationships extending across multiple HAB blocks, where clean bandages and infection preventatives command exchange rates exceeding accumulated rations in economies where survival probability determines creditworthiness. Critical threat emerges through Arbeit's investigation protocols when data clerk Kale documents ghost prisoner ledgers during routine compliance audits, his rigid adherence to Lex Imperialis transcending local administrative adaptations. The evidence reveals systematic fraud extending throughout administrative hierarchy, photographed discrepancies between official tallies and actual populations, procurement invoices revealing impossible supply chain logistics, and collar override logs indicating systematic manipulation of selection protocols. His encrypted data slate represents single point of failure threatening to expose entire corruption network through documentation transforming individual survival strategies into criminal conspiracy prosecutable under imperial law, whose enforcement could destabilize carefully balanced systems enabling continued planetary function. Institutional corruption becomes survival necessity rather than moral aberration when official systems prove inadequate for maintaining operational efficiency under quotas calculated without considering environmental limitations or equipment degradation rates. The fraud provides essential pressure release valves for staff discontent by creating profit opportunities, compensating for hazardous posting while ensuring collaborative silence through mutual vulnerability. Each corrupt practice serves dual functions of personal enrichment and operational necessity. Ghost prisoner schemes provide resource cushions absorbing supply chain disruptions. Bell protection services reduce prisoner resistance through hope, manipulation, and medical supply fraud generates revenue streams funding unofficial operations essential for meeting imperial tithe requirements. Evidence accumulates, suggesting Arbeit's investigation targeting systemic reform rather than individual prosecution through documentation patterns indicating comprehensive audit extending beyond focused criminal inquiry. When collective liability principles apply to administrative hierarchy where guilt permeates entire operational structure, investigation protocols must determine whether systematic fraud represents criminal conspiracy requiring punishment or operational necessity requiring regulation. The machinery built for transforming systematic brutality into administrative policy faces examination by imperial justice, whose intervention threatens to destabilize corruption networks that enable continued function through carefully managed violations of protocols whose strict enforcement would create system collapse requiring planetary replacement rather than administrative reform. The Arbeit's investigation reaches its predetermined conclusion at 0430 hours when Proctor Thane signs red-sealed warrants authorizing comprehensive purge protocols designed to restore administrative confidence rather than eliminate systematic corruption. Data clerk Kyle's meticulous documentation provides sufficient legal justification for selective enforcement demonstrating imperial authority, while preserving operational continuity essential for meeting tithe obligations whose interruption would trigger intervention more severe than local fraud. Imperial justice operates through calculated brutality, targeting inefficiency rather than immorality, its enforcement ensuring continued function of machinery, transforming human suffering into strategic resources through improved precision and reduced administrative vulnerability. Dawn raids commence with choreographed precision designed to minimize operational disruption while maximizing psychological impact on surviving administrative personnel. Arbeit's shock troops deploy through sealed corridors using override codes obtained during evidence seizure, their movements synchronized with shift changes ensuring maximum witness presence during arrest procedures. The first sound is boots on gratings, and the clamp of mag seals as evidence lockers operate in reverse. Chains applied to ledgers rather than removed from prisoners, whose systematic disposal continues without interruption. Data clerk Kyle disappears into interrogation cells beneath Arbeit's headquarters before his testimony can complicate tribunal proceedings, his rigid adherence to Lex Imperialis transforming from administrative asset into operational liability. Enhanced questioning techniques extract comprehensive intelligence regarding corruption networks while preparing documentation for subsector review. His fate recorded only as coded entry in Proctor Thane's personal log marking source, security and information extraction. The informant becomes classified waste, whose disposal eliminates evidence while preserving institutional knowledge essential for implementing corrective measures. Warden Quartermaster Dex faces public flaying in processing centers where prisoners witness imperial justice applied to their oppressors, the spectacle providing psychological release while demonstrating that corruption carries consequences transcending hierarchical protection. His ink-stained hands clutch requisition manifests as Thane reads charges of procurement fraud with mechanical precision, the flayer's maintenance sharp blade measuring respirator costs across flesh, while servo skulls record proceedings for administrative documentation. The execution serves dual purposes of punishment and theatre, its visceral demonstration reinforcing compliance while eliminating operational security threats. Warden Governor Valdris retains his position under formal censure because production quotas must continue despite administrative disruption, his survival representing practical compromise between abstract justice and operational necessity. The scarlet censure strip pinned to his coat provides official documentation of disciplinary action while maintaining command continuity essential for meeting Imperial tithe requirements, whose failure would trigger planetary abandonment rather than administrative reform. His reduced authority operates under direct Arbeit's oversight, creating dual command structure, ensuring compliance while preserving institutional knowledge that replacement personnel would require months to acquire. Collective penalties descend across prisoner populations through systematic ration reductions justified as punishment for abetting fraud through participation in black market economies enabled by administrative corruption. Entire HAB sectors lose food allocation privileges, creating artificial scarcity designed to eliminate underground trading networks while demonstrating that survival cooperation with corrupt officials carries consequences extending beyond individual participants. Proctor Thane addresses assembled personnel from elevated platforms overlooking processing centers where public executions provide visceral demonstration of imperial authority, his voice carrying across Vox networks as he recites fundamental Arbeit's doctrine. The law is a sword that does not bind the hand wielding it. During the purge, the ninth bell tolls with modified cadence, marking confiscated ledgers and excess personnel culled to rebalance resource allocation rather than prisoner selection for specialized service. Each strike measures administrative actions rather than theological ceremony, its mechanical precision revealing operational priorities transcending spiritual considerations. Servo skulls drift through abandoned offices recording inventory while incinerator furnaces consume documentation whose preservation would complicate future operations through excessive transparency regarding systematic practices requiring discretion for continued effectiveness. Arbeit's detachments clear HAB Delta through comprehensive search operations targeting resistance networks identified during interrogation procedures. There, movements coordinated through intelligence extracted regarding prisoner cooperation with administrative corruption. Mother Iliane clutches her chalk records with hands stained grey from forgotten names as shock troops designate her for service processing, her documentation of systematic disposal representing security threat requiring elimination through specialized handling. She asks Thane to record the final 2 names before evidence collection, her request denied as the board enters confiscation while she enters administrative inventory. The purge reveals the system's central contradiction where institutions generating systematic abuse also punish corruption to maintain operational efficiency rather than moral consistency. Imperial justice operates through calibrated brutality designed to preserve function rather than eliminate suffering, targeting individuals whose fraud threatens productivity while protecting those whose brutality enables systematic oppression. This represents recalibration rather than reform, ensuring continued operation through measured applications of terror that maintain compliance while eliminating administrative vulnerability. Evidence accumulates suggesting similar purge patterns replicating across other Imperial penal facilities through standardized protocols distributed via Arbeits command networks, creating systematic approach to corruption management that demonstrates Imperial authority through selective enforcement. When entire administrative layers face elimination through comprehensive investigation, institutional knowledge transfers through documentation rather than experience, creating operational disruption requiring extensive adjustment, while replacement personnel adapt to local conditions whose complexity exceeds standard training preparation. The machinery continues grinding forward through applications of justice whose primary function involves maintaining systematic brutality with improved precision, its operation ensuring that human resources continue transforming into imperial assets through calculated hope, and systematic disposal operating within carefully managed parameters of acceptable corruption. The purge protocols conclude not with justice but with recalibration, Proctor Thane's final reports transmitting through encrypted channels to Subsector Command, where systematic brutality transforms into case study documentation. What occurred in Habdelta becomes training material for Arbeits academies across 3 sectors, the techniques refined through prisoner suffering now codified as best practices for population management. The machinery grinding forward through calculated hope and systematic disposal reveals its true nature. Tartarus Secundus operates as prototype rather than aberration, its successful methodologies enabling imperial expansion through proven techniques whose development costs recover through systematic implementation across populations requiring enhanced compliance. Macroanalysis reveals penal worlds functioning within cyclical resource flows that stabilize imperial authority through systematic transformation of social instability into strategic assets. Social unrest generates criminalization opportunities as emergency edicts expand definitions of seditious activity, unlicensed assembly, and insufficient loyalty demonstration. Criminalization provides workforce for labor extraction operations, producing military hardware, while funding technique development essential for territorial expansion. Military assets enable conquest requiring increased surveillance to maintain control over larger populations, creating additional opportunities for criminalization through enhanced monitoring capabilities detecting previously unobservable infractions. The cycle perpetuates itself through mathematical precision, each revolution generating profit measured in throne geld and strategic advantage calculated through human cost accounting. These facilities serve multiple strategic functions extending beyond simple punishment into systematic resource generation. Penal worlds stabilize labor supply volatility by absorbing workforce disruptions during economic downturns or industrial strikes, their captive populations providing guaranteed productivity independent of civilian cooperation. Political dissidents disappear into systematic processing that eliminates martyrdom problems while generating valuable outputs offsetting disposal costs. Specialized production includes penal legions equipped with debt charge collars for expendable military operations, servitor components feeding Imperial logistics networks, and refined population control techniques whose effectiveness receives validation through systematic testing under conditions impossible to replicate in civilian environments. Tartarus Secundus exemplifies optimal implementation through dual-purpose operations where resource extraction funds technique development, while human processing provides test subjects for psychological conditioning protocols whose refinement enables broader deployment. Successful innovations receive comprehensive documentation before export across the sector through administratum directives and commissarial advisories. Sopor Fog deployment, perfected during Gallery Tertius collapse, now provides riot control for 3 hive prefectures on Hydrax 9, with dosing adjusted for local malnutrition rates. Collective liability protocols pioneered in Delta 7 migrate to factory discipline on Soran Prime as team safety penalties, bearing Ministorum signatures. Collar frequency stratification appears in city garrison protocols as geofencing for pilgrim routes, sacred maps functioning as operational containment systems. The rotation system governing administrative personnel represents career development pipeline, ensuring systematic brutality becomes institutionalized knowledge rather than individual aberration. Junior functionaries begin careers learning population control through prisoner supervision while developing psychological resilience essential for implementing systematic terror without emotional compromise. Mid-level personnel refine techniques through operational responsibility, managing complex systems of calculated suffering. Senior administrators export proven methodologies through advisory positions and policy development, their institutional knowledge creating standardized approaches whose implementation ensures imperial authority through systematic applications of refined terror. Commissar Vex's promotion to planetary compliance operations demonstrates this pipeline in action, his expertise in population management through systematic brutality qualifying him for civilian oversight, where similar techniques maintain order through applications refined during prisoner supervision. His assessment memo distills operational knowledge. Trigger thresholds lower when confessionals feed audit networks. Compliance increases 9 to 13% when bells ring off schedule twice monthly. Public cutbacks require careful pacing to avoid martyr economies. Administrative personnel cycle through penal assignments acquiring practical education in human resource management whose principles apply across hierarchical structures requiring compliance maintenance. Assessment documentation reveals strategic calculus through bureaucratic language transforming human cost into operational metrics. Throughput normalized indicates successful processing meeting projected disposal rates while maintaining productivity quotas. Mortal cost acceptable represents mathematical determination that casualties remain within parameters, justifying continued operations through cost-benefit analysis, measuring lives against strategic value. Techniques validated for broader deployment confirms successful development of population control methodologies whose effectiveness enables expansion to civilian populations requiring enhanced compliance measures. The original questions receive answers through systematic analysis revealing operational logic underlying apparent chaos. The ninth bell coordinates logistics rather than marking spiritual transcendence, its tolling synchronizing transport schedules, processing quotas, and disposal operations through precise timing protocols ensuring maximum efficiency in human resource management. Redemption balances ledgers rather than providing salvation, its accounting systems transforming systematic murder into production statistics through bureaucratic alchemy, converting flesh into assets more stable than mineral extraction. Hope organizes compliance rather than offering genuine liberation, its careful calibration maintaining cooperation through manufactured possibility whose mathematical impossibility remains psychologically essential for preventing complete system collapse. Evidence suggests 47 worlds within the subsector now implement techniques perfected through prisoner suffering, manufacturing complexes utilizing collar frequency systems for worker monitoring, while agricultural settlements deploy collective liability protocols for harvest quota enforcement. When memory itself becomes scheduled inventory through systematic identity erasure, prayer transforms from spiritual practice into administrative technology whose effectiveness depends on concealing operational reality behind religious symbolism that makes systematic disposal emotionally bearable for those implementing imperial policy through calculated applications of refined brutality whose strategic utility enables expansion through proven methodologies whose development costs justify continued human processing operations. The strategic utility that transforms 47 worlds into laboratories for systematic oppression returns finally to individual scale, where abstract policy becomes personal arithmetic, each calculation measured in flesh and time against quotas designed to exceed human endurance. The prisoner from intake, whose methodical record-keeping began with a single scratch on corroded metal, discovers that his tally marks now cover hidden wall panels in dense networks of parallel scars. 2,847 marks. 678 days of perfect performance. The mathematical impossibility achieved through survival that defied statistical projections. Monthly brand recalibrations have created palimpsest of scar tissue across his flesh. 17 layers of Lex Imperialis verses applied over previous marks until his skin becomes living parchment recording bureaucratic revisions rather than personal history. Each cauterized sigil overwrites the last through systematic tissue destruction, creating bureaucratic geology where original identity exists only in secret chalk marks scratched beneath his bunk frame with a spoon handle worn smooth by repetition. The accumulated scarification transforms human beings into administrative documentation, whose flesh bears witness to policy implementation through calculated applications of systematic brutality disguised as spiritual purification. At 0847 hours, he reports to chapel, carrying the bone plastic tally chit that has grown soft from skin heat, its stamped numerals filled with accumulated grime from months of handling like sacred relic. Confessor Merrick waits with practiced benedictions whose theological presentation conceals transport preparation through religious ceremony, his thumb leaving oil smears across forehead already scarred by intake processing. The sacred oils taste of metal and industrial lubricant, while servo skulls record biometric data for manifest completion, their optical sensors capturing facial geometry enabling identity verification during specialized service deployment. Tech adept Zephyr 9 approaches with collar diagnostic apparatus, augmetic limbs probing shock delivery mechanisms while verifying transport compatibility through technical assessments determining optimal routing for human inventory. Voxcant frequencies pulse through metal housings with contented electronic purring, testing circuits and confirming detonation fidelity for Penal Legion deployment. A green lumen indicates successful calibration, while secondary confirmation affirms explosive charge integrity, the collar transforming from restraint device into remote-activated execution mechanism, ensuring compliance through guaranteed mortality rather than disciplinary pain. The ninth bell begins its harvest call with mechanical precision that reveals logistical coordination concealed behind theological symbolism, bronze resonance carrying across atmospheric processors while synchronizing transport schedules with processing quotas. He joins column formation with other redeemed prisoners whose collar frequencies respond to Voxcant 9 Theta summons, their movement coordinated through technical systems rather than spiritual inspiration. Red and blue collars alternate down the line in patterns designed to balance cargo loads while maintaining operational security. through demographic distribution. The march proceeds toward auxiliary landing platforms where 2 vessels wait beneath landing lights bleeding through perpetual smog. The Departamento Munitorum Penal Transport extends its boarding ramp like mechanical moor, cargo holds configured for maximum human capacity, with restraint systems prioritizing containment over survival probability. Beside it, Mechanicus servitor processing cradles sit like open mouths lit from within, their internal machinery emitting rhythmic thrumming designed for biological conversion protocols. 2 tracks representing identical destinations in imperial accounting systems that measure human worth through statistical abstractions, converting flesh into assets more stable than mineral extraction. Arbite's Proctorthane waits beneath rain hood at trestle table, stacked with administrative parchment, his rubber stamp moving with practiced efficiency across slates bearing Gothic script. The word redeemed appears in red ink, whose theological presentation conceals operational reality behind religious terminology, making systematic disposal emotionally bearable for those implementing imperial policy. Each stamp transforms systematic murder into statistical achievement, while servo skulls update manifests recording successful completion of human resource management through proven methodologies, whose effectiveness enables broader deployment across populations requiring enhanced compliance measures. We do not follow his departure toward transport bay or processing cradle. The bell keeps time for those whose redemption through service reveals its true administrative nature. Instead, we return by paths worn smooth by morning shifts to examine spaces emptied by systematic processing. His bunk has been straightened, the spoon handle removed, the wall panel slid back into place like wound closed, without stitching. Assignment boards display fresh entries where erased names leave only faint rectangles marking administrative efficiency in human inventory management. On hidden wall surfaces, Mother Ilyane's chalk marks stop halfway down the final line, her stroke hooking once before dragging off into nothing as Arbite's processing interrupted documentation of the disappeared. The incomplete record points toward empty air while water buckets overflow with maintenance failures that convert into infractions owed by people already processed through specialized service assignments. Her ledger remains unfinished, another casualty of systematic purification designed to eliminate institutional memory, threatening operational security. The 9th bell's echo fades into life support system hiss, the same mechanical breathing that opened our investigation, now revealed as operational soundtrack for machinery, transforming human beings into imperial resources through systematic applications of calculated suffering. Atmospheric processors continue cycling toxic air through filtration systems while maintaining productivity independent of individual survival rates, their industrial rhythms measuring time in units of disposal rather than hope. Under an empire of scarcity and absolutism, where survival requires collaboration with systematic oppression, hope functions as administrative technology moving human inventory, where ledgers require rather than providing genuine liberation from conditions designed to eliminate possibility through mathematical impossibility. The machinery continues grinding forward through applications of refined brutality, whose strategic utility enables imperial expansion through proven methodologies, whose development costs justify continued human processing operations. Cognitive closure arrives through comprehension rather than consolation, understanding replacing comfort in systems where mercy measures itself in reduced quotas and salvation balances books through precise accounting of systematically manufactured despair.